don't see that in the current changing modern world. Now every person wants to be in the other company every couple of years. So what are the measures we need to take to get this attrition rate to the lowest possible level?
Yeah, I mean, I might be the wrong person to kind of give gyan on this. I've stayed in an organization for 11 years before I changed. So it is. I mean, while my friends have had worked in some 7-8 companies, by the time I just moved one. So there are no right or wrong answers. I mean, I wouldn't say the friends who have explored different organizations have got it wrong, or by staying in one company, I've got it exactly right. It is circumstantial. I mean, while I was working for an organization for 11 years, I also looked up. I also looked at opportunities outside. Some things didn't work out. Maybe the role didn't work out, or I didn't get selected for other companies. So it can happen. It can, all of these happen. It's an opportunity, exploring different organizations. So I think organizations are working really hard to kind of create an environment where people can stay and thrive. If you don't like it, you will move on. I think, say for example, I've used the same toothpaste for 30 years. I haven't changed my toothpaste. But today's generation, I don't think they will do that. I mean, they would be more open to looking at different toothpastes. And work is also like that. People will see an opportunity, and they would want to take that opportunity up. So it's up to the organization to say, why should you stay with us and not take up the other opportunity? So organizations are working on it. I don't think, and today everybody and a lot of us who get together to kind of discuss this, my belief is that we have to try and create an environment where people will want to stay and thrive. You have to keep giving them opportunities. You have to challenge them. I think one of the things that uh, current generation gets a little worked up is when there is inadequate challenge, when they are not they don't seem to enjoy, if it's not competitive, it's not monotony doesn't work for a lot of these youngsters. So how do you create a work environment where there isn't monotony? Even if you are doing the same job every day, can I make it different? So the kind of engagement activities organizations are coming up with today, the kind of work changes that we are doing today, giving them different opportunities, like work on different projects. Some organizations will give you holidays, some organizations will give you onshore offshore projects. So every organization to its own. I mean, I can't send you to US, UK, because my job or my entire organization is in India. So what do I do then? I will ensure that I keep you near your home location. So that might be an attraction for a lot of people, saying that, okay, I'm at my hometown and I'm doing a substantially great job, but still I'm nearer to my parents or nearer to my roots, so I'm happy. So everybody will have a different hook. Every organization also has to identify those hooks to keep the people, rather than saying that I will follow some other organization which is doing something. So everyone to their own. But my belief, students or the new age employees trying to jump ship is not wrong. uh, I think the organizations have to wake up and say, it is a different generation that is out there, and therefore we have to change the rules of our game, rather than expecting the students or the new employees or new age employees to uh, evolve and start becoming like our fathers, who have stayed in the same job for 40-50 years. They're not going to be that. Expecting that is foolishness on the part of the organization.
Correct. So from the organization's point of view and from your own perspective, you might have seen a lot of youngsters getting into an organization. So, what is that thing that attracts them the most? Is it the monetary benefits or the non-monetary benefits? And if
Yeah.
it is non-monetary benefits, then what additional value they expect out of an organization apart from the regular remuneration perks?
I think a basic level of monetary benefits are critical. So there is a threshold monetary benefit that you will have to give, which will attract a group of students. You can't say that I give you a great opportunity to work on something that is going to be path breaking, but I will not pay you salary. I mean, I don't think that's going to work with a lot of people. So there is a minimum threshold, and that is different for different organizations. So how much money we make uh, will determine what kind of salaries we will be able to pay, and so on and so forth. So that is important. So when organization then identifies that threshold, saying that, okay, this is my threshold, therefore this is what I'll offer, uh, and there will be 20 other organizations which will also offer the same thing. So now I think that the critical differentiator then becomes the non-monetary that each of the organization offers. How do I create a sense of purpose? For example, I'm helping a lot of these middle income, low income group and customers to fulfill their dream, and that's my purpose as an organization. So try and attract people who have a similar purpose, people who identify with something like that, people who come from humble backgrounds. So if you're able to position your proposition or your non-monetary benefits, like purpose, like the reason why you exist, etc., to a group of students and employees who are who align with that, then you are able to get them attracted, and then they will join you. You will not be attractive to all 100 students. I mean, all 100% of the students. So one of the things that you'll have to also be mindful of is that you can't make a proposition that is attractive to everybody. So identify the group of students who you will be attractive to, and then work on that, and that becomes critical for organizations. Anyways, I can't hire all 100. I'm only going to hire 5, right? So how do I make it impactful for these 5? How do I make it so what is it that those 5 are looking at? Can I put it out there on the table and then make it useful for that? So that's how I would look at it.
Right, right. Does the titles have an impact on the hiring process? Because some people say that business development executive, and some other people say that sales managers. And does that have any impact on the hiring process first?
It does. I think, unfortunately, yes. While personally, I don't think it should, but that's the reality in which you are living today. Because and one of the things, it goes back to the first thing that I said about expectation mismatch. Titles are something that create expectation. So the same thing, like a sales manager versus a business development executive. The expectation of a business development executive is that you are hunting for new business, whereas a sales manager is about convincing the existing customers. I mean, if in a traditional sense. So but while people are now using different titles to mean something completely different, uh, but it was in a sense trying to tell the expectation of the role. The title talks about the expectation. What is it that the organization is looking for, and therefore the title becomes important in a hiring process, or an attraction process, or how are you able to attract the right set of people. If you were to call operations executive, then you know that people who are focused on operations and people who are wanting to look at process, etc., will come in. Uh, Unfortunately, we have confused a lot of trying to make it look fancy, etc. We've lost the ethos or the essence of the titles.
Titles.
If you were to use it properly, they will be a they will be a differentiator. But if you go the woke route, you may not be able to get the best out of it. That's how I look at titles.
Okay. And since we touched upon the sales aspect, and these sales targets, is it a bane or boon?
We can't survive if there are no targets as an organization. So for us, it is a boon. For the people who are coming in, it is tough. It is so balance is what is required. I think then some of the organizations like ours are working on that, where we don't say, okay, it is the target, and if you meet the target, you're there. If you don't meet the target, you're not there. Flexibility around the target itself, that is important. So for example, a new market for us versus a old market where we are established, the targets will be different. In a new person versus somebody who spent 1-2 years in that space, the targets will be different. The target itself will not be multiple things, should be focused. I mean, you should have 1 or 2 or 3 things that are targets. You can't have one person having 20 KRS because you want to try and make that person all rounder. It doesn't happen. They are not running the organization. You are running the organization. They are doing their jobs. So you have to focus on the job that you are expecting out of that person, and keep only those 2 or 3 targets that are achievable, and be easily understood. I think a lot happens in these targets where you create so complicated setting mechanisms, trying to solve for everything in the world, saying that, okay, they have to ensure this also and they have to ensure that also, so I'll put everything in the target. You focus on one area and say, okay, this is where you can influence, go and get that. Everything else should follow. I mean, you should trust the person to say, you should trust the person to do the right things and give them the target. You can't try and doubt that person and therefore put everything in the KRA or the target and say, you have to achieve this also, and then you have to achieve this also, and then you have to achieve this. That kind of defeats the purpose of a target. So simplification is critical. And if you have it simple, then I think even the employees will like it, because they know what they have to do. If you give them 20 targets, then they just get confused. Just give them 2, give them 3. We have a rule of 3. We say, boss, not more than 3 things that you should focus on in our targets. Just that kind of helps. A lot of people, that kind of helps.
That sounds good. But when people hear about the sales and target, the first thing that comes to their mind is stress. So
Yeah.
what should they do to cope up with that or come out with that?
I would say just achieve the target. If it was as simple as that. But yeah, I mean, it is inevitable. I wouldn't call it that stress is not there, and particularly in sales roles, because the prevalence of the target is a lot more, and the time period within which you have to achieve the target is also a lot lesser. Therefore, the stress seems to be higher. It doesn't mean that an HR person's targets are less, or that the HR person doesn't go through any stress, or the finance person doesn't go through any stress, or their targets are less. It's just that the prevalence and the cutoffs. For example, a recruitment person has to hire 400 people into my organization. So there is tremendous amount of stress for that person. And there is a target, and therefore that person has to do a lot of things to achieve. But is it measured on a daily basis? Because the world outside is not looking at it. Whereas my sales is something that everybody is looking at. So there is, so therefore, while the sales target is easier than, say, the recruitment target, but 100 people outside are also looking at it, and kind of adds to the stress. So it's the positioning. Finance person's targets are even more tougher to try and work on, ensuring that we don't have any audit observations, ensure that all the government regulations are met, and our accounts are audited, and there are no audit, etc., etc. So there's whole lot of things that the finance and accounts person has to do, and it is very, very tough. But because it's not out there, not a lot of people look at it. Seems less stressful, while the salesperson's and it's just that it's just about every month they get measured, or every day there is a con call to see how much have they done and how much have they not done, etc. Sounds a little stressful, but it is not. Actually, people who enjoy it, who thrive in it, they don't find it stressful. It's just the set of people who find it difficult. You're not cut out for it, therefore you find it stressful. I would say that.
Great. Actually, there was a myth that only sales has targets. So you have cut across all the domains. Everywhere, say, target will be there. But
Yeah,
this gets exposed since it is closer to the market and every people comes to know about it.
true.
So, do we have any measure to understand the morale of the employees? How?
We do. I think that's critical in any organization, and continuously measuring that is critical, even more critical. And so what we do is uh, pulse checks, engagement surveys, uh, one-on-one conversations, uh, doing coffee conversations, meet the CEO, lunch with the CEO, lunch with CHRO. All of these are means of trying to find out this level of engagement. I mean, this is something that we all do, and it is all like I said, it's critical for every organization to measure this morale and then work on the morale. I mean, so that's the next step. While we measure, which is great, we also need to ensure that we work on it. So find out what is the issue, and then identify the groups where the issues are, where the morale is down, where the engagement is down, and then see what needs to be done to improve that morale and engagement. That's a continuous process. I mean, it continues, and you won't get an answer. uh, I mean, every time it'll be a different issue. Different regions will have a different issue. Different segments of population will have a different issue. So you will have to continuously measure it, improve, take feedback, and then keep measuring. Don't stop measuring once you've done something. So that's critical.
So whenever you talk about team morale and team thing, you might come across a lot of conflict during your professional career. So can you narrate any one incident and how do you come over that?
Okay, so I think conflict is a nature of the game. I think because there are, I mean, while everybody is trying to work towards a common goal, there is always competing interests. So for example, I want to introduce a new incentive program. The finance team will come around and say, okay, this is not meeting the set of regulations that we have, or it doesn't meet our internal uh, standards that we've kept, or it may not have the impact that we are envisaging that it will have. So in such an instance where there is conflict because of competing thoughts on a singular subject, the best way to do it is communicate, I think, and that's what we do a lot. What we have is called committees. I mean, small committees which work on projects or activities or decisions where there will always be these conflicts, where everybody has a different point of view or a differing point of view. So these committees then kind of thrash it, sit together, fight it out, be open, because at the end of the day, I think what works in a conflict and resolution is that putting it out there that it is not personal. A lot of times conflicts are not resolved because people think it is personal. I mean, I have a personal agenda, or somebody else has a personal agenda around this. If you take that personal thing outside and put it out there upfront that it's not personal, and this is why I am saying what I'm saying. These are two critical aspects of giving the intent and making it non-personal, then resolves the conflict. So for example, like I said, in the incentive space, they would come out and say, okay, this is the reasons. Then I will have to counter with what is the mitigants, for example, and clear the doubts. I cannot bulldoze. I cannot say, okay, I'm the decision maker, so I will go ahead. I will have to answer them, satisfy their doubts, and then generally conflicts get resolved. Sometimes they do linger. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a perfect strategy. You always resolve conflicts. There is, and that happens in most of best of the organizations. Uh, but the reason was always this, that you thought it was personal rather than thinking that it is issue. People put a person to the problem and then say, okay, because of that the conflict will continue. Unless you take that person thing out, the conflict never gets resolved. I mean, that's my advice to people. Just do not fight the person, fight the problem. When you fight the person, then the conflict never results, because they're also there to fight. They will fight back. So fight the issue. You will be able to resolve the conflict faster.
Very rightly said. And just work for the welfare of the organization and the growth of the organization. Don't fight against the individuals there.
Yeah.
That's well said. So before I open up to the participants for a few questions, one last question. What would be your suggestions for education institutions or education system as a whole? What changes you would suggest for us so that you could minimize your onboarding process on one side? On the other side, what the students should equip themselves to get into an organization?
So I think, while a lot has been said about this, so I'll just couple of things. One, I think the expectation. I think you rightly put it out right at the beginning. How do you bridge that expectation issue? So if 10 different types of organizations come, 10 different sectors, organizations from 10 different sectors come to your college for placements, how do you equip the students with the understanding of these 10 different organizations? Maybe try and do it a lot earlier, maybe in the first year itself, expose them to such industries, and then try and understand which industry suits them better, if they are able to make up their minds a little earlier. And then what they can do is focus on that through the next few years. Become a little more sector specialist. While MBA programs are generalist in nature, you're creating something for all seasons, all sectors. But a lot of people will have an interest, which they will eventually find out after they get started in working. You are interested in financial services, but you end up you starting your career in manufacturing. What do you do? You'll figure out you'll not fit in. You'll get out of that and then move on. But you sat for that interview because you didn't know much about it, or you didn't know whether you would be good for that sector or you'll not be good for that sector. So that exposure in the beginning is what I think the colleges need to do a lot more of. Give them that exposure, allow them to do a bit of research. That's how much of it is practically possible, I don't know. Whatever can be done should be done. From the student's point of view, I think research is a big thing. And particularly because you are doing an MBA course, work on your research skills, because any role that you will do, sales role, HR role, IT role, finance role, it doesn't matter. World outside is a comparative space. So unless you have the ability to research, you will not know what to do. You are not becoming scientists, that you have to invent something. You have to do something that works, for which you need to know what works. And that only comes using research. Finding out what is happening in the market. Do a lot of market survey, market research, best practices. So any activity, any job, or any subject that you pick up, try and understand the market out there for something like that. If you're doing digital marketing, what's happening in the market? What are the tools? What are the things that are the latest in that space? Unless you do a research on that space, you will not be successful when you get into the organization. See, today there is a demand supply mismatch, and therefore organizations are investing a lot of time and effort in training you once you get in. But it's not going to remain the same. Over a period of time, we are a very young workforce. A lot more competition is going to happen. The hybrid workforce today is now opened up opportunities to get people from anywhere in the country. Just because you are in a particular city, state, you are not privileged. A lot of people are now getting exposed to, and they're getting the opportunity to work. So your competition is increasing. So students have to therefore be ahead to be able to get the right job. So companies are going to become less and less tolerant of people who are not prepared. So preparation, research are the two things that you will have to do a lot more to be able to be successful.
Thank you for your valuable suggestions. I hope students will adapt that. And before we leave, Mr. Ramakrishna, can we have some questions from the audience? Actually, it is happening in the hybrid mode. A few of our students are in our auditorium,
I know.
and others have joined through Google Meet link, and some of them have joined an YouTube link as well. So,
Okay.
people in YouTube link, you can type in your questions if you have any in the chat box, and we can take it forward. And people in the auditorium can ask the questions directly to sir. If you have. So I have a question from a participant, Daniel Jayakumar.
Mhm.
Can both the categories can be met during this pandemic period? Like right person, right job, right cost. Is it possible during this pandemic period? This is this question.
Yes and no. I think the pandemic has also opened up a lot of new things, and therefore, say for example, we are working on analytics, which will tell us some of the skills or key attributes of a person who will fit into a sales job well. So what we are looking at is doing converting that into, say, an assessment that we can give to colleges, and people in the colleges then can go through that assessment and say, okay, do I fit a sales job, for example. A lot has already happened in this space, and a lot more is happening. I think the pandemic has helped us focus on this a little more, and get us, so it is helping, and there is a lot that is happening in the right person, right job uh, area. It's a ever evolving field. Honestly, it's not fully done, but yeah, there is a lot of scope, and there is a lot of work that is also happening in the parallel.
Thank you, Ramakrishna. Any other questions?
So what are the specific skills or additional requirements to become HR manager in the current scenario, like Excel, ERP?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you properly.
Hello, sir. Myself, Govind from Canada School. What are the specific skills or additional requirements to become an HR manager for current scenario?
So I still couldn't hear you. Somebody else can.
Voice is not audible. But you can, yeah.
Sir, am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you are audible now.
Sir, what are the specific skills or additional requirements to become HR manager for current scenario, like Excel, ERP?
Okay, perfect. So I think HR, it's not a generic space. There are multiple areas. So if you are looking at something like recruitment, a lot of understanding of people behavior becomes a critical skill. But if you're looking at performance, then ERP, Excel, those are things that are critical. While because you will have to understand business performance, understand how individual performance is impacting business performance. So knowledge of such areas like ERP, etc., are going to help you start off better. So you will be at an advantage when you join an organization. But the problem is that they are not very generic. Like in a sales or any other finance, HR is not a generic field, which will be you can't pick something that works in manufacturing and then implement in financial services. So that is the problem for HR in particular. So exposure to generic areas is good, but you will have to work again on the same when you join an organization. The specific set of ERPs, etc., in that organization, you will have to learn. There is no choice.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Myself Niveta Bai from CAB Business School, and I have a question for you. So, what is your future goal, and what like you most about working in human resource?
Okay. My future goal. I think I'll continue doing what I'm doing. I don't think I have a very esoteric goal. It's a simple one to do well in the role that I'm doing. What I like most in HR is the kind of impact I get when I pick up something. In sales or in any other function, I mean that's unique to HR. Is that you have a limited or a narrow impact of whatever you do, but when you do something in HR, it has an organization-wide impact most times, and therefore it's a added responsibility on the HR people to be that much more responsible in doing things. So high impact, high pressure kind of a role. That's what excites me in HR. Hope I answered the question you had.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, let's have this as the last question.
Yeah.
I'm Arnie from CAD Business School. I have a question for you, sir. What made you consider HR as a profession?
Okay. Pretty interesting question. I had a very interesting journey. I started off. I mean, when I was doing my MBA, I was a finance major. I wanted to be in finance. I didn't want to be in HR. I did my internship in Bank of Baroda and I was doing an NPA analysis. I mean, so they had a lot of non-performing assets. So I was doing analysis on that. One of the things I realized is that is not the space I want to be. I think that 3 months of internship taught me that I can't work in finance. I mean, it's too boring for me. And I want to be in a place which is more lively and a role which impacts a little more than doing all these financial statement analysis and securities analysis. So that was something that I kind of hated. So I went back to my school, B school. I spoke to my director. I said I want to change, and he said, you know what, it's not going to happen. So you have to. I mean, you have to take your. I couldn't change all my electives. I had already taken. So finance, marketing were my electives. I didn't have anything in HR. I had just 2 subjects in HR. I didn't have more than that. So, but I worked hard in those 2 subjects. I realized that is something that I like. He said, take a chance with HR companies. I sat for an HR company. They selected me for whatever reasons. I don't know. They did select me. So, and then my journey started. But it was, honestly, it was by doing. And that's why I talk about this experience piece and expectation piece. Unless you do something, you don't realize what you're good at or what you're not good at. By theorizing it, you will not be able to figure out. So by doing something in finance, I realized that was not good for me. And by doing something in HR, I realized that it was interesting, and this is something that I'll be able to do well. So that's how I realized that I'll be decent in this, and thankfully it worked out well. I didn't have to rethink whether it was good or not. So that's how it happened. Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ramakrishna, for accepting our invitation and sparing your valuable time, full 1 hour with us, and it was a very fruitful discussion. And every word you spoke will be a gem for all our students, and they'll cherish this moment throughout their career. Wish all of them a good, successful career. And over to the MC team. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gratitude is the single most important ingredient to living a successful and fulfilled life. Here comes Arani to deliver the vote of thanks.
No duty is more urgent than that of returning thanks. A warm and great good afternoon all. I, Arni of First MBA, deemed it to a honor and privilege to deliver the vote of thanks on this HR conclave Work Ecosystem, the new paradigm for Next Gen, organized by CARE Business School. I would like to thank our chief guest, Mr. Ramanakrishna Vijayamadaga, for your presence and wise words helped to magnify our cause in the best possible way. Today, we came to know more about work culture, how to adapt work culture, how to face conflicts in the organization. I would like to thank Mr. Venkatesh, HOD of CARE Business School, faculties, volunteers, students, and last but not least, our beloved audience for making this event a grand success. Once again, thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
My
Ramakrishnan.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All the best to all of you. Thank you.